I want to take on Iron Mike.
No, you're nothing.
I could do it.
No.
I'm 4 to 9 times stronger than the average man.
Ain't that something?
I could do it.
Stay away from me.
After his fight with Floyd Mayweather, Logan Paul is already talking about picking a new boxer to fight with. And hold your breath, it seems it's gonna be none other than Mike Tyson. This was said during Logan Paul and Jake Paul's podcast called Impulsive, and the two brothers along with Mike Malak were participating. The three of them seem to be discussing the aftermath of the fight against Floyd Mayweather when the question seems to pop up about who Logan Paul is going to fight next. It seems that Logan Paul was not holding anything back because he ridiculed the legend Mike Tyson about a dozen times within a single minute. Could this fight actually end up happening? And how has Mike Tyson responded? Find out in this video. After only as few as 5 days after the Mayweather vs. Paul fight, Logan seems to have recovered the minor bruises he got from that fight and is getting back in the game on his podcast. After talking about who Logan should fight next, Logan says that someone had mentioned Mike Tyson. Jake gives out a little laugh at this, and Paul asks him how funny it would be if they pulled it off. It appears that the two still seem to be speculating about this matchup, but there is a very good chance that it will happen, as Logan Paul has already publicly called out the boxing legend Mike Tyson.
Stay away from me.
It was clear that both Logan Paul and Jake Paul were visibly excited by the possibility, and you could see Logan questioning the possibility. He asks Jake if he should stick to one grade at a time, or if he could actually handle Mike Tyson after entering the ring against Floyd Mayweather last week. After mentioning Iron Mike, Logan seemed to have been surprised by his brother Jake, as he could not find the words to respond to that question. "Yeah, I don't know," said Jake Paul. But Logan seemed to really be in the mood to discuss that possibility. Mike Malak chirps in by saying that he needs to know that Mike Tyson is a pretty mean guy. Logan didn't really seem too concerned about Mike Tyson being mean, so Malak said that Mike Tyson actually pieced some people in the past. "Have you seen what he's done to some of those people?" asked Malak. He has been known for breaking his opponent's ribs in the past, amongst many other body parts. So it's safe to say Mike Tyson has been a force to be reckoned with. So a comment regarding how absolutely destructive Mike Tyson is seems quite justified. At least we think so. But Logan Paul didn't seem bothered. Quite the opposite, in fact. Logan actually seemed excited after Malak's comment on how mean the guy is. "That's what they said about Floyd," replied Jake Paul, who seemed pretty hyped up about the possibility now. Hearing this, Logan shares a conversation he had with his lawyer. This kind of shows that Logan Paul has already been considering fighting Mike Tyson in the ring, and the fans are pretty confused because that matchup is sort of unorthodox. Logan said that he did not exactly get a very supportive response when he brought up this topic to his lawyer. Logan said that his lawyer told him that not only does he not stand a chance against Mike Tyson, but there's a good chance that Mike will rip his head off. It's not like Paul was describing this in a concerned manner, but as if he was making fun of his lawyer for speaking out against it. We all know that Logan Paul can get a little too cocky sometimes, and that seems to be just the vibe he gave off after mentioning the conversation with his lawyer. Logan said that he replied to his lawyer that this does not bother him at all, and this is precisely what they said about Floyd Mayweather in the past. "You can't tell me that. Also, he's like old, said Logan. Well, Logan is definitely right about that last part, as Mike Tyson is going to turn 55 this year. As much success as Mike Tyson has had, no one is sure what would happen now that he's a little too old to get in the boxing ring. But regardless, he has been called out. Logan Paul is not even half of Mike Tyson's age, considering that he's only 26 years old, and perhaps around the peak of his strength. It cannot really be expected that a person in his 40s would fight another in their 20s, as it's just a huge mismatch. However, that's exactly what we saw last week with the 44-year-old Floyd Mayweather back in the ring after 4 years. When Floyd defeated Conor McGregor, he was 40 years old, so perhaps a case can be made that one can continue to fight until he's at least 50. In just those 4 years though, Floyd's fighting skills seem to have deteriorated despite him landing some pretty solid punches on Logan Paul's face last week. However, can the same be said for someone 55 years of age? Probably not. Many fans think this is like challenging George Foreman to a fight, who was no less of a legend a couple of decades ago when he was in his prime. Although George Foreman is still leading a center that coaches boxing, no one would say that he can still actually fight in the ring. Similarly, challenging Mike Tyson to a fight is perhaps embarrassing for Logan Paul rather than Mike himself, since he has moved past his boxing career over 15 years ago. Just like Floyd Mayweather fought his last actual fight at the age of 40, the same was the case with Mike Tyson. His last fight was 15 years ago against Kevin McBride, titled Legends Only. Although Mike was defeated in that match, it's safe to say that he ended his career with the utmost grace and a lot of respect from the fighting community. No one in their right minds would have wanted to challenge Muhammad Ali to a fight 10 to 15 years ago, despite him being the pinnacle of success in his career. Having said that, if Mike Tyson actually responds to this and tries to enter a training routine again, let's just say that things could get very, very interesting. The same cannot be said for the fight last week, because people seem to have been overhyped for a fight that just did not deliver according to the expectations. Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul, which did not end with a winner, being that there were no judges for the fight, was described by fans as a pretty boring one-on-one. In fact, Logan Paul actually got a lot of heat for, quote, hugging Floyd Mayweather throughout the match, which may have prevented Floyd from hitting him at times. Overall, it left a very bad taste in everyone's mouths. Floyd still managed to land 42% of the punches he threw at Logan though, while Logan could only manage a measly 12% success rate. It is worth mentioning that facing Floyd Mayweather did take some guts on his part, so kudos to Logan Paul for that. And since he didn't get knocked out during the 8 rounds, that's another plus for him. However, it is being speculated that Floyd had knocked Logan Paul out at one point, upon which Paul kind of just leaned on Floyd. It's being said that Logan Paul was knocked out at this point and Floyd only managed to keep him up. If this is true, that means that there was a shady term attached to the contract between Floyd and Logan Paul. Understandably, the fans are quite outraged by this, and combined with the fight not delivering nearly enough, the overall experience seemed to be mediocre at best. Having said that, Floyd Mayweather made a whopping $100 million from this match, for which most people would do pretty much anything. Going a little easy on your opponent during an exhibition doesn't sound like the worst idea against $100 million. Similarly, $20 million was the figure earned by Logan Paul in last week's fight, which isn't as high as 100, but it's still quite a lot of money. Anyway, that's all from this one, folks. Make sure to let me know your thoughts about a possible fight between Mike Tyson and Logan Paul. Thanks for watching and have a great day.